This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and today is my special guest for the second time, none other than former UWF World Class Championship Wrestling and NWA Valet, among lots of other places. I think she may have even had a WWE match at one point, but I'll ask her, the perfect 10 herself, Baby Doll.
How are y'all?
Doing great, and you're looking as good as ever. How have you been doing lately?
Really awesome. The little boy's out of school, so we're spending the summer together, and then got some vegetables going in the garden and flowers, and had 4 deer out in my front yard eating the clover because we haven't been able to get out and mow it because of all the rain. And things are great. Excellent.
The WWE thing I was wondering about was I was looking at your Wikipedia, and this my Wikipedia has some false stuff, so this might be false, but it says that in 1988 you had some training with Nelson Royal and were trying to get in WWE, but they ended up going with Rock and Robin instead. Do you have any recollection of that?
That actually is pretty true, except for it was 1987 because I actually had my 1 year anniversary up at Nelson Royal's camp when I was training with Robin. So yeah, it's true. 1987.
Did they ever take a look at you in the ring, or what was the deal there?
It was a really awkward situation now that I look back at it. I'd gone to the matches because I was with Sam and Jake and Grizz and all them, so we were traveling all over. And Sam just one day was just like, "Hey, go get your gear on. Leilani wants to work out with you," which was Leilani Kai. And Leilani and I've been good friends like forever. So I was like, sure, I'll go work out and just do some moves and kind of, just, I thought it was just a workout. Like we just had some extra time and just jump in the ring. I had no idea like people were actually, that it was serious and they were watching me. And this was basically my tryout. I would have probably done a lot different knowing this because it's different between like a scrimmage and the game. And they didn't tell me it was a game. But then I look back and Robin got the shot out of it, and she did so well with it and had such really good matches with Sherry Martel, and everything worked out for the best. It really did.
There's a fan on here, Michael Collins, that wants to know if it's true Dusty Rhodes was infatuated with you behind the scenes.
Um, Dusty loved the character. Dusty called me Marilyn. He thought that I was like his Marilyn Monroe. I wouldn't say infatuated with me, but I think that he absolutely loved the character of Baby Doll and how much creative stuff he could do with that character, whether it was heel or babyface. And with the size that I am, there was so much more that they could do with me. And it really opened up a lot of creativity that Dusty could do, not only with himself, but whoever I was with. It was the best compliment I ever received was when I saw Michelle Rhodes a couple of years ago at a fan fest in Charlotte. And she came up to me and pulled me off to the side and said, "I just want you to know that you were Dusty's favorite." So out of all the girls that Dusty worked with, for her to say that, that was like the biggest compliment ever.
Wow. Josh wants to know what was the favorite match you had. I don't know if you had all that many matches. You were more known as a manager.
Right. Well, I wonder if he means the matches that I actually had or if I was involved with.
Yeah, well, let's hear it. I'd be curious to know. Obviously, the I Quit match with Magnum must have been up there, but what are some other ones?
The I Quit match with Tully against Magnum at Starcade in 1985 was by far it's got to be like one of the best professional wrestling matches ever in the history of wrestling, from the complete build up and how much the animosity that the guys had between each other. Everyone had its part, and if anyone was different, it would have never worked. Like if Tully didn't have me and he was just going against Magnum, it would have been great. but it wouldn't have been legendary and probably wouldn't be talked about 35 years later. Um, the most memorable probably would be the Cotton Bowl, where we had the six-man tag and where Jake and Gino and Chris Adams won the six man, and then Gino won titles, and it was just really really cool to be like at a stadium that I'd gone to sold out Rolling Stones concerts at, and now I was like main evented the Cotton Bowl, so that was really cool. And then I was so green too. Oh my gosh, I hadn't even been in the business 2 months, and here I am in like a mixed tag and main event and craziness, but it was fun, so much fun.
How was Fritz to work for in general?
I never had to deal with Fritz at all. I knew Fritz more like when he was working with my dad with the promotions. Um, I do know that he hated me chewing the gum as a character, and that he says, "Man, I hate her." And he said, and David Manning was like, "That's what we want. We want that heat. We want her just hating her, just and the little things like chewing gum is going to make people not like her." So he kind of the only thing that I heard that he didn't like was they didn't like me chewing gum on promos, but then that was to get heat. So obviously, I got heat if you get heat with a booker.
There's a fan that would like to know if the Perfect 10 nickname was inspired by the Bo Derek movie.
I am not sure. I'm pretty sure it was, but then it's the heat because everybody can look at me and go, "Well, she's not a 10. And who does she think she is calling herself a 10? And she's no Bo Derek." And yeah, so yes, absolutely. I would say yes.
I think I remember that movie actually, but I don't have a full recollection of it, but it wasn't bad.
Oh, it was a good little movie with Moore, the little bitty short guy, and Bo
Yeah,
Derek,
he was funny.
running down the beach. I mean, that was an iconic scene. If you've got a couple iconic scenes in a movie that people remember, and yeah, it was good.
Monster Zero doesn't have a question, but he says you were his favorite. He loves everything you did in wrestling, and thank you and God bless you, he says.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. Thank you very much. God's blessings to you too.
Donnie would like to know what your reaction was about Dusty Rhodes passing.
Very sad. I mean, when you finally realize that you're never going to see that person ever again, you're never going to see them at a fan fest, you're never going to work another match with them, you're never going to get a phone call. It's very humbling. I was very sad, and I'm still sad because the anniversary was just a couple of days ago of his passing, and he'd gotten so sick and tried to hide it from everyone. And I'm glad he was home, with his wife, and I know that she went through a lot with that, but I hope it gives him some comfort that he was at his home.
After the last interview, a few fans told me I should have asked you about your thoughts on Nyla Rose and the transgender wrestling that's done these days, because I guess you have a opinion on that.
Well, I have an opinion about transgenders in athletics where women are forced to compete against biological males in athletic competitions. It's not fair. Um, for anyone to say that wrestling is non-inclusive and that we're racist and we're homophobic and we're transphobic knows nothing about professional wrestling, because professional wrestling has accepted everyone from before my mom and dad wrestled. Before that, I mean, we took in everyone because that's part of the gimmick, that's part of the show, is to have something different that no one has seen before, that no one understands, but you're either going to have people love you or hate you. And for Nyla, I think it's wonderful. My daughter's worked against her several times, and I have nothing against, because Nyla's telling everyone who she is and what she's got. And it's not a facade. It's not anything that anybody's trying to trick anyone. And yes, wrestling is a work, and she's getting over. So why not? I mean, wrestling and competitive sports, two different things.
Yeah. But it does hurt more for a female, I can imagine, to be chopped or hit by a transgender than another female overall. But maybe someone with that you were taller than most and stronger, you would have had good matches with one.
I I doubt that because I was never a good wrestler, so um, that's probably why I never wrestled. Um, it's all in the show and it's all in putting people over, you know. So my mom was hit so hard that the girl broke her jaw. She got hit up in Canada, and the girl socked her in the face and broke her jaw, and then she fell out. She was doing some move on the top rope and slipped and fell off the ring and broke her shoulder. So the whole tour while she was up in Canada, she had a broken jaw and a broken shoulder. So injuries happen no matter what, and you just have to be careful. And I would think that Nala or someone with extra size like myself would try and be more careful because we have more strength than most people do.
I know I wouldn't have wanted to wrestle the giant every night, personally.
Right.
Uh, but
Well,
speaking of,
I don't think Cornette wanted to work against me either because I potatoed him every single night for like 24 nights.
well, I'm happy to hear that. James Parker wants to know how it felt to be slapped by Tully Blanchard. That looked brutal.
It was. It was he did not hold back. I had pierced earrings, like stud earrings, and the back of the stud actually went into the flesh back behind my ear. I had to like pull it out. He hit me, and it looked good, and it was part of the thing, and it was built up, and yelling and screaming at each other. And if he'd pulled back or made it look like it was a work, then it wouldn't have. It never would have gotten over. And that's one of the cool things about with what I did is that no one doubted anything that I did. It's really cool to have people say, I believed what you did. You know, everything else was fake, but what you did was real.
What do you think about today that after all you guys went through to protect the business and the business was a lot more popular back then? Now it's hardly protected at all and it's just looked at as a joke by people for the most part.
I would like to think that maybe we were the last generation where people actually believed in what we were doing. It wasn't like a practice gymnastics routine. It wasn't flippy floppy and um, maybe in the mid 90s things just really turned and people just didn't accept anymore because it was no longer cool to believe in it. Everybody had to be smart, so they kind of cut their own throats in it. And the business changes every 10 to 15 years. It takes a complete almost 180, so it was bound to change. And I'm just glad I was in part of it when it was what it was at that time.
Now, you were part of the recent Dark Side of the Ring about Grizzly Smith. I got the chance to watch it. They didn't use as many clips of you as I would have liked to have seen. But what are your thoughts on the whole thing after watching it?
See, I haven't watched it yet. I really should have before this. I would realize that this afternoon. I'm kind of putting it off because it does involve members of my family with Robin and Sam and Jake and I knew Richard. I know Richard really well. We went up there to Whitesboro a couple of times, and it would. Looking back now, I learned more after I got out of the family than when I was directly in there. It was amazing how much Grizz could hide everything. Even when I was living right there, I had no idea. And you kind of have an idea that something's wrong because people have talked so much and people were always like how much he liked young girls, but what older man doesn't like young girls? So it was just a whole strange situation. And throughout it all, I'm glad that Robin and I are still friends, and I hope that she knows that if I knew anything about this, I would have helped her. I wish I knew what to do. I wish I'd known what to do then.
So I guess when you were married to Sam, he didn't say anything because it looked like they all kind of remained on decent terms with the father over the years.
Oh yeah, it was. There was no way that Sam couldn't have known about it. but whether he actually understood what he was seeing were two different things.
Now we know that Jake lied in some of the other dark side of the rings. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but people have actually done the research and proved that, particularly in the Ultimate Warrior one, he told some straight up lies. What do you think for the people that say, well, why should we believe everything he says in this one when in the other ones he wasn't fully honest?
Why would you lie about it? I guess is the whole. I mean, it's one thing to come clean and tell about the abuse and the whole thing, but what does Jake have to gain from it? What does anyone have to gain from this except for maybe helping someone else who's in a really bad situation have the strength to get out of it?
Did they push you at all to try and get specific a specific angle out of you from your answers, or
No, it was I liked all the questions. They were all it seemed like they had really studied up on a lot of things. And I was kind of at the end of all the interviews, so they had interviewed a lot of people before me, so they had a lot of background. Um, I didn't have any problem with it. They seemed to be really upfront guys and that were interested in giving a different story of wrestling, like a really dark side, and it lives up to it because it really does bring out a different view of what was going on. And even myself, like with Gino, I learned a lot out of the Gino thing, and I was right there for years with Gino. And then I learned a lot with the Smith thing. Then I was right there. So maybe it's best I don't know things. I'm pretty naive, I guess, when I look back at it.
Mark wants to know what Gino was like outside of the ring.
Exactly like what he was inside the ring. Just that sharp tongue, always like on, always looking good, always checking himself. Never had a spot of anything on his clothes. Was A plus 24/7.
Richard says, would you have expected back in the 80s that Aaron Tully and Ric Flair would still be on TV in big companies in 2021?
Never would have thought it, and I'm thankful that they're still alive when you think about it, because they're really lucky after everything that they've been through. To even be alive is amazing, and then to be stellar in their career again is great. And then Arn's got his son working, Tully's got his daughter working, and Flair's got his daughter working. So it's amazing.
Speaking of Tully's daughter, I guess ever since she left Impact, which I'm curious to know your thoughts on them making her men's champion, but she left Impact, didn't drop the title. I guess her contract was over, so it was their own stupidity. But she hasn't been picked up by WWE or AEW since, and that was, I think, last June or so that she had the falling out with them. So do you think she's just taking a break with her marriage and stuff, or what's your
Well,
opinion on her?
I think with COVID, she got stuck down in Mexico and couldn't get back into the state. So that's a perfect excuse right there. I mean, if you can't come back, you can't come back for that time. Um, I really I don't know what to say about the men's title because once you beat a man for the men's title, where do you go from there? Are you going to keep beating small guys or big guys or I mean, it's kind of confusing about where once you reach that pinnacle, where do you go from there? And then Tessa has she's a perfect heel. She's got an amazing body. She's got a great work ethic. I think that there's some jealousy with some people um, saying things that she's done and said that probably didn't happen. And if they did, time to go on, and she's a valuable talent that I hope that they don't waste her and don't use her.
I know I saw a picture of her and her husband training with Dustin Rhodes about a month ago at that AEW wrestling school. So maybe that's some type of sign. I guess time will
So
tell. Jacob wants to know, how was it working with Sunshine and Stella May?
I didn't work with Sunshine that much. I knew her more when she was working with my dad when she was with the Freebirds. Absolute sweetheart, had the beautiful face. No matter what was going on in the ring, you could look at her face and she sold it perfectly. Just so, so, so good. Stella May was great. Older woman had a little girl with her named Stormy. She helped me out, worked out with a little bit, but we just didn't have time to work out to get everything right. And then I was so green, and then we were basically beating each other up. I really feel sorry because I really did beat her up.
That's funny. Mike has a question. I'm not sure if you ever met Elizabeth, but what are your thoughts on her passing and the unusual, I guess not unusual for wrestling, but I guess she got involved in drugs with Lex Luger, and it was an early passing for sure, sadly.
Hmm. I never met Elizabeth, and I never met Randy Savage. I do know Lanny from when I was a little girl, and he came through Lubbock working. I might have been like 8, 9, 10 years old. Lanny's great. Hold on just a second. So the only thing that I know about Elizabeth was we were on like a 3 or 4 day travel schedule that was awful. It was one of those where you landed at the airport, you got to rent a car, you had to drive 300 miles, you had to go back 300 more miles to the next town to work because you had early promos. So we were like on the third day of this really awful excursion going through the airport. The flights were really delayed. We were in a hurry. Elizabeth had told Randy, I want to get a piece of pizza. Let's get a piece of pizza. And he was just like, no, we can't get pizza right now. And besides, you don't deserve it. And I looked at Sam like, did I just hear what I just heard? And he says, oh, yeah, he talks like that to her all the time. And we just kept walking. And I couldn't believe. And this was like when she was like the heyday, the whole, like it was awful that someone would talk to another person like that and just say that you don't deserve it. And here I know that we hadn't eaten all that morning and all that afternoon, and it was just kind of sad. So whatever they said about it, it was probably true. And yes, if they said that Randy didn't lock Elizabeth Way in the dressing rooms, he did. From the time he was in Tennessee, even Sam said that because he kind of joked, well, I guess I got to lock you away in the dressing room. I was like, he says, oh yeah, Randy locks Elizabeth all the time. But I understood that he did it because he didn't want the guys like accidentally walking in on her. And I understand that too.
Someone was asking if you still keep in touch with Tully.
I talk to Tully a couple of times a year because we have like fan fest and different things that we run into. Now, because of COVID, I haven't seen him, but I believe I'm going to see him at the end of this month up in Pennsylvania.
Mark would like to know if you could tell us more about your father, Nick Roberts' Lubbock, Texas promotion that he had. I guess he would run shows there.
Right. My dad promoted in Lubbock for over 20 years. Started out in the Fair Park Coliseum and then ended up at the Civic Center. We ran every week, every Wednesday for over 20 years. Fair Park Coliseum was like the perfect wrestling building. We had everybody from the Funks, Von Erichs, Andre came in a couple of times a year. The world champion came in at least once a year so we could build up the title. We the Sheik came through when he had the snake. It was like the perfect childhood to see your dad on TV with the wrestling promotion, promoting the show for Wednesday. And then if you were really good and on summer breaks and Thanksgiving and things like that, we could sit on the back row ringside and get to go to the wrestling matches. And then when we were old enough to carry 4 chairs, we became part of the ring crew. And then from Ring Crew, we went to concession, and then I sold programs, and my mom sold tickets, and that's the way we grew up. And it was so cool. It was just a really cool way to grow up.
Do you have any stories about Andre?
Um, actually, I got to drive him around whenever I was about 17, 18. We had a show down in Odessa, and I had to drive him back to Lubbock. I had just gotten back from Germany and was telling about what a good time I'd had, and this really good grass vodka. It was buffalo grass vodka. It actually had the stem of a piece of buffalo grass in the bottle. And he was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with that." And we were just talking. So, about 2 months after that, I got a package at my house, and it was addressed to me, and it was from Ellerby, North Carolina. I'm like, my mom's going, "Who do you know in North Carolina?" "Oh, I don't know. Frenchie, the man that ran Andre's Ranch, had mailed me a case, which was like 4 bottles of the buffalo grass vodka. Andre had told him to had gotten it for me and had told Frenchie to mail it to me. So Andre the Giant at one time mailed me 4 bottles of vodka.
I hope you didn't drink it all at once.
No, it took a little while. It was good. It was like really good.
So if any fan wants to make you happy, they could send you that brand of vodka if it's still around.
Oh, I guess so, but I'd rather my husband send it to me. I won't get in trouble.
Now you mentioned the Sheik too. He's one of my favorites. Where did you have any experiences with him?
Ed Farhat, yes. Oh my gosh. He had the most beautiful jewelry, the most beautiful pristine suits, just dressed immaculate, had the little purple glasses, very well spoken. And one of the cool things is the Sheik was wrestling up in Detroit and had been down in Texas for a couple of weeks working with Art Nelson as a super destroyer. And especially in Lubbock, my dad had built it up to where we had like Arabian death matches and the fire matches and things like that. So the Arabian death matches, my dad actually brought in truckloads of sand and put it around the ring. So it was like a foot of sand all the way around the ring so that they could fight it and throw sand at each other's faces and the whole thing. I'm so sorry. So the Sheik was up in Detroit at one of the shows talking about how cool it was working down in Texas and how the promoter had really gone to extra lengths to bring everything together and make it really super. And was talking about Nick Roberts. And so Jake's up there and he's working, and for some reason it just clicked. Jake the Snake, Jake the Snake Roberts, and it clicked. So when Jake and I were doing our road trips in Dallas, we were talking about different stuff and was talking about my dad and promoting and the whole thing. And he put it together that while he was up in Detroit, he got the name Roberts from the Sheik mentioning Nick Roberts up in a Detroit dressing room.
Very interesting. Now for the sand, I just got to know because I've never heard of those type of matches before. Would they have it out for the whole show, or would they take an intermission before the main event and somehow get the sand spread around the ring?
It had to be spread out because they had to like move the chairs so that they could bring the dump truck in and dump it all out. There was that much sand. So it was out for the whole show. It wasn't just a couple of buckets, it was a lot of sand.
So I guess the wrestlers in the prior matches just stayed in the ring.
Right. Because you didn't want to mess up and do something that they were going to do in the main event. So yeah, it was basically walk to the ring, work in the ring, and then walk out. Yes.
Here's an interesting question. This person's asking, who is the worst person you ever had to work with in wrestling and why?
Oh my gosh. The worst person. Ooh. Hmm. The one, God bless, I don't know. I don't know. Um, the most miserable person to be around would say would be Arn Anderson or Ole Anderson because he was never happy. He was always mad. He was always an old fart. And who wants to be around an old fart? And Ole was an old fart. But even back when he was 40 years old, he was an old fart.
We've heard a lot of those type of stories over the years. This is another interesting question. Mark says you seem like a natural heel. Was it difficult for you to switch to a baby face?
Yes. Because you have to wear your makeup, you have to be pretty, you have to smile, you have to be nice. Otherwise, you're not a baby face. And you don't want people going, gosh, she's in real life, she's a bitch and awful and everything. So you have to be kind of overly nice and overly like the high school cheerleader and everything's great and everything's one. You know, so it was kind of hard for me as a baby face because it was a heel. You could put on sunglasses, go to the store, nobody bothered you. Baby face, if you didn't have all your makeup on and everything was good, then something was wrong with you.
Steven says, is there anything in your career you wish you could have done that you didn't do?
Oh man. I really I would like to manage my daughter, and I think I've said this before as the lucha. If we ever did something like be a heel team and my daughter do the heel thing, and if I could manage her as La Puta Grande, that would be cool.
Just putting this picture up for anyone that hasn't seen your
Yeah.
daughter. She's very pretty. Were you against her getting into wrestling at all, knowing the type of industry that it can be?
No, because she's also a perfect heel. And once you have that inclination that that's what you want to do, the only thing that's going to stop you is your body. God,
They
because your
should.
body, because your body doesn't want to take the bumps. So if she could get through taking the bumps, tucking her chin, not hurting herself, and learning how, I can't stop her. A lot of people that I know that really, really, really want to be wrestlers could not make it through taking bumps because her body was just like, no, you're not. No, because since you're a small child, you teach yourself not to fall and not to fall down because it hurts. Well, with wrestling, you teach yourself how to fall and fall very hard and very deliberately. And some people, their brain just has more common sense than the rest of us and goes, don't do that. You're hurting yourself. So once she got through the pain of taking bumps and the first couple of days she trained where she couldn't like lift her head up the pillow, and then the next day she was wanting to go to training, I knew there was no stopping her.
Yeah, you should get her in World Class Revolution. They're about to start back up in September in 4 different states. But I'm sure she wants to be in bigger federations too. But I'm going to be involved in that one, and I'd like to see her in action.
Well, you just never know. I mean, you like to work, and unless you're in like the top ones, you're just going to hold yourself out and just not work. It's not always the biggest shows that are the most fun. Sometimes you make the biggest impacts at some of the smaller shows. So it works out.
Rick Brooks loves to know about Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer. Do you have any interactions with him over the years?
We had, I think Tully had one or two matches on TV with Mad Dog, and he's just kind of one of those that when he was in a good mood, everything was great, but 90% of the time he was kind of that manic depressive. So he was like depressed and staying down. So just not one of those people that you wanted to just kind of hang around and pal around with. He wasn't the most social guy in the world.
Well, depression, I believe, is a side effect of cocaine when you're coming off of it. And he ended up dying related to that. So that may have had something to do with his mood swings.
Maybe I just hit him at times he didn't have anything.
Grayman Media says he loved your days in Global Wrestling Federation, but there was a guy called Snake, aka Mike Davis, who referenced Robin, Snakes, and Grizzly. Do you remember that guy at all?
I remember Mike Davis that was wrestling in Charlotte, but I don't remember like in Dallas at that time.
Mark wants to know if you're going to be back in Texas anytime soon.
Not that I know of. My mom passed away in October, and so I just have my brother in Lubbock right now, and my nephew. And right now, probably not. I've got other things going on in North Carolina, and with the summer going on, and chickens and turkey and dogs and kid, I don't have much time to go travel a lot.
Daniel has a point though. WrestleMania is in Dallas next year. Maybe you'll make the trip out for that. Who knows?
Maybe hit WrestleCon like what I did a couple of years ago up in Baltimore.
Yeah, it's a good thing you missed it this year. It was very poorly attended. I heard nobody really made money out of unless the wrestlers had guarantees.
Right. I
Steven
think it was
wants to know
Daniel.
if you had much interaction with Jeannie Clark, who was Lady Blossom, and she was also in World Class with Chris Adams and Steve Austin.
Right. I met Jeannie a couple of years ago at a fan fest in Charlotte. Actually, it was the same one where Michelle was at. Um, just a wonderful person, just lovely. My husband got her book for me and had it signed and autographed it for me. Just a lovely, lovely girl. Just I'm glad I got to meet her.
This person, Mixed Partial Farts is his name, wants to know your favorite food, favorite movie, and all time favorite TV show.
Oh my gosh. My favorite food. Oh, see, that's hard because I like so many. Um, if I had an all-time favorite, it'd be sushi. I'm just a big sushi fan. Anything, anything sushi, sashimi, the whole works. Um, Favorite movie would be Wizard of Oz, and favorite TV show, The Office.
Did you ever see the Oz character that Kevin Nash did in WCW?
Actually made his tights because he has a
Really?
long tights. Yes, and so I was doing costuming and gearing at the time, and he was just starting out, and his legs were so long that I had to piece the material together at the knees for it to have the stretch and be long enough for him.
Do you still do that, or you're too busy with other projects?
Just too busy with every because it really takes a lot of time. And if I did, I really need to make my daughter some stuff. I feel bad. I really need to make her some stuff.
Rec 46 would like to know what was your personal favorite year in wrestling?
Mm. It had to be 85 when I worked with Tully. Everything clicked, everything worked, everybody was happy, everybody was making a ton of money. The trips weren't horrible. Had to be 1985.
I think, other than like the Gorgeous George days, 1985 may have been the greatest year ever in wrestling.
Probably. I mean, when you look at like all the promotions, everything going, the merchandising, there was still the like we had major territories and then we had smaller territories and then we had the real small territories. So if you were a professional wrestler, you could be working anywhere at any time and still able to travel and work in certain areas. Like you could still work Mid-South. You could go to Georgia. You could go up to New York. You could go to Portland, Seattle. You could go. There was it was just a magical time.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. Do you have any memories of Eddie Gilbert?
Oh, Eddie, yes. Eddie and Missy Hyatt actually lived right down the road from us in Euless, Texas, where she did the little bikini centerfold with her and Eddie at the pool. They lived right down the street from us. And I had done a show for Joel Goodhart, might have been 88 or 89. Um, and Eddie carried my bags into the show for me, and then he passed away just about 6 months after that. Eddie, really super, super good guy. Super, super.
Jason Willard wants to know if there was any heat between David Manning and your parents for allowing you to manage Gino.
Oh, um, not that I know of. I think there was more heat with me because they thought I had better sense than I did, but obviously not. I mean, who quit school to go be a professional wrestler? But I did.
Well, it seems to have turned out all right for you.
It was all right. I mean, I can always still go back to school. It's not something that it's canceled forever.
There's no dark side of the ring about you.
Oh no, no, no. I found it. I was very lucky that I found out very early in life that getting in trouble is very expensive. I also saw what the effects of cocaine was before I even tried it. So it was just something that I never wanted to do because I knew with my addictive personality, it would probably be something that I really, really, really would like. And I didn't want to be destroyed by something that I had no control over. Um, been very fortunate. My parents instilled a lot of good values in me. And also, um, I had a lot of, if I did something bad, I had to face up to them. So there would have been a lot of repercussions, and I didn't want to face my parents and disappoint them. And now being 59 years old, and now my parents they're all gone now. I want to have the good reputation because I don't want my kids embarrassed for anything that I've done. So I mean, I've been a big enough embarrassment being their mom. I don't want them, oh mom, I can't believe you did that. So especially when it was something I could control. So no, no dark side of the ring for me.
I noticed when I was helping out with the Texas company regularly that the Texas dressing rooms seem to be more of a party atmosphere than anywhere else I'd ever been. So I can imagine it was probably worse in the 80s. But would it have been similar in the 80s? Like, would Texas have been one of the more wilder dressing rooms than maybe Mid South or the Crockett's territory?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my dad would put a case of beer in each dressing room, had the big coolers iced down. We had to ice it down by 2 o'clock on the day of the show and have a case of beer on each side. And then you couldn't drink before your match, but you could have a couple of beers before you left, before you left. Um, Definitely Texas between Amarillo territory with the Funks and then world class with the Von Erichs, a lot of very lenient dressing rooms, very lenient. Yes.
How is your relationship with Sam today? I know you guys had problems over the years. Are you guys back on friendly terms, or are you still not speaking?
We don't really speak that much. I mean, because of my daughter. Well, we kind of run into each other because of my daughters. But he's down in Monroe and has a girlfriend, and I believe from what I've heard, I mean, he's supposed to be getting married. That's awesome, and I wish him much happiness with that. But it's like what my husband has instilled in me is exes are exes for a reason. So I um, try and make everyone happy. So I don't have anything to do with Sam because I'm married to Chad, and we just think that it's better that since I'm married and Sam is an ex, that it's best that he's an ex, and I completely agree.
Yeah. Or if you're like me, you can just become pure enemies with all your exes, so that's never even a factor.
See, I think that's the way Chad has with his deal, and I don't want to be enemies with anyone. So I mean, I mean, I wish Sam all the best, and I hope he's successful because that's going to help his daughters in their future endeavors and anything that they want to do. Plus, then you want your parents successful, so I want that for my daughters, for him to be, happy and successful. But I have no control over it, and there were some pretty bad times, and we went like 11 years without seeing him, and he was off. going to wonderful trips to Japan and wrestling and things like that. And I was raising our kids with like no child support or no help from anyone, and it was difficult. But now that I look back at it, my daughters are strong, resilient females, and they don't put up with crap from nobody. And um, I have nothing but pride for myself that I was able to raise two wonderful, beautiful daughters by myself, and they're my product, and that it's a good thing he wasn't around because things would have been a lot different. And we're all good now, so we're all happy.
Is the one that wrestles Sam Houston's kid too?
Oh, both of my daughters are Sam's. Yes.
Oh, oh, I didn't realize that.
Oh, if you see my oldest daughter, she looks just like Sam.
So the one that wrestles is third generation.
And third generation female wrestler, which I don't think that there's anyone that has her pedigree, because her mom and her grandmother were both wrestlers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Henza Machine wants to know if you could enlighten us. Buddy Landell, I guess before he died, said you guys had a special relationship. What did that mean?
At the time, Buddy was doing a lot of cocaine and was married, so we didn't really have a relationship. We hung out a lot. Um, I think that Buddy knew that they were going to put me with him and that he was going to have the run for the world title to go against Flair. So there was a lot of anticipation about what that would bring about. And then Buddy went on a like a 2-week cocaine binge, and nobody knew where he was at. And the day that they were supposed to turn uh, or put me with Buddy, he no showed TV, and that's when Dusty switched me babyface up in Greensboro, where Tully did the slap, and I turned babyface with Dusty. So there wasn't like a special dating thing. There was no.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I've heard there was several instances where he was going to be pushed to the moon and he blew it
Yep.
literally through
That is
drugs.
absolutely true. Absolutely true. The time that he was supposed to like make his move and everything was going to fall into place, and he was going to get the push that everybody as a professional wrestler dreams of, and he no showed TV, and every time we saw him after that, he was like a wombat. His, his, this, it was awful. It was so sad to see that everything had just fallen apart.
Daniel would like to know if you ever hung out with Sherry Martel.
Yes, hung out with Sherry a couple of times. Awesome, awesome girl. First time I'd seen, and it was just kind of embarrassing because she had a tattoo on her chest and she was getting her makeup done and everything. I was like, oh, they got makeup on. No, I have a tattoo. And it was, oh, oh. And she said, yeah, I've got a rose. And so I just thought that was so cool that, to have, because back then females didn't have tattoos like what they have now. And I thought that was so scandalous to have a tattoo on your chest, like so close to your breast.
Rob Steele is asking if you have memories of Big Bubba Rogers, aka the Big Boss Man.
Oh, yes. Um, World, I guess it was World Championship Wrestling had come to Texas, and they were at the big Coliseum there in Lubbock, and my girls were little; they were probably like 4 or 5, and so we took them to the show, and so Ray was like, "Hey, you got to come out to the hotel and hang out with me." So we went out to see everybody, and Ray shared his Chinese food with my daughters, and we talked about like Crockett and bashes and beating up Jim Cornette and the whole thing. And I thought that was so sweet that he would share his food with my daughters. But Ray was just super, super guy. And Angie, his wife, and I still talk on Facebook every once in a while. And just it's a shame he's gone. He's one of the ones that whenever we have fan fest, I really miss. Um, Ray Trailer, Boss Man, and Eddie Gilbert, I think, are the two that I miss the most whenever I do fan fest.
That is unfortunate because I've heard many stories like that as well. Everyone has positive things to say about him. Someone would like to know if Wild Bill Curry ever worked for your father.
Yes. I remember seeing the pictures in the office, because he was so crazy looking and everything that he actually had autographed picture in the back office.
Tony would like to know if you ever or how you liked working with the great Kabuki.
Kabuki came and ate at our house a couple of times. My mom would fix a meal after the show, and Gary Hart several times would bring the guys out. We had Mark Lewin and Kabuki and Gino had come out a couple of times. Um, very, very nice man, very, very quiet, and but very gracious. Just and for me, kind of when he spit the green mist, that was one of those things you see wrestling all your life, and then every once in a while you see someone do something that you go, "Ooh, that's good," and that was really good.
Tammy would like to know how was it working with Bill Watts when you were in UWF?
The worst road trips ever, and I don't know if it was planned this way or if this was the only way that they could book towns. But unless you were driving 500 miles one way, there was something wrong because it would be like we'd be in New Orleans one day, and then we'd be in Tulsa, and then we'd be in Jackson, Mississippi, and then we'd be in I'm trying to think, Shreveport, and then we'd be. It was just like back and forth and back, and then with Shreveport, and then we'd be over in Oklahoma City, and then we'd go back down to like Tyler, Texas, and then have to go all the way back to like Amarillo. So it wasn't like you could do like Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Amarillo, Lubbock, Wichita Falls, and then come back and do like a loop. It was just this crazy back and forth, and I never understood the road trips unless it was like the maximum amount of mileage you could put on that day.
James Payne would like to know who is the humble, most down to earth top card wrestler off camera to be around.
Oh wow, there's a lot of them. Um, Ricky Steamboat probably. Just very humble, very gracious. Um, always dresses really well. Just the epitome of like a star athlete. But I would say Ricky Steamboat.
The wrestling knowledge wants to know if you ever ran into the Ultimate Warrior during the Texas or UWF days.
I met Warrior. He started in WWF whenever Sam did, and they actually did road trips for the first couple of months, and then or maybe first couple of weeks. But Sam, I don't think had quite the workout ethic that Warrior did, and didn't want to go to the gym quite as much as Warrior. So Sam didn't make all the road trips after that. So yeah, at the very start, I met Warrior when he very first started WWF.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So he was fairly normal back then.
No,
Oh no.
no, he was 11, but like the what is it, Spinal Tap, the movie, where if you can go to 10, that's great, but 11 is fantastic. Well, yeah, Warrior was 11, 12 at that time, and getting ready to get amped up to 20. But yeah, he was already like that.
This is a good question as we near the end here. Michael wants to know, and JJ Dillon told this story to me in a shoot interview, that you, him, and Vince Russo were at the same table at an event and it was awkward. I know that Vince and JJ have made up since then, but do you remember anything about that?
It was I do because it was one of those things where you're like signing autographs and things, and I'd never met Vince Russo, so I knew who he was by sight, but I didn't know who he was. And when he came up to talk to JJ, you could just see that like something was about to happen. And then they kind of had the words and the apologies and the okay, we're good type thing. And it was and JJ, whenever Vince Russo walked away, you could just almost like this weight just left. And I was kind of like, bet you didn't think that was going to happen. And he was just like, I would have never thought. So yeah, everything he said was true. It happened. Kind of one of
Very
those odd things of like, it was not planned. It was just like the stars intersected and they just happened to be right there at that place at the right time, and it happened.
A bunch of people have asked about this, so this will be my last question for you today. Memories of Paul Bosch in Houston.
I mean, Dallas was great, and Dallas had its own thing going. But when you look at the history of Texas wrestling, Houston was a place. And it was Paul Bosch had the promotion from, like from the beginning. He had the place to go. He was kind of separate. He wasn't like with Dallas, and he wasn't with like he had his own separate thing. So, um, class act, class guy, and if you were in Texas wrestling, that was a place where you wanted to go. Was you wanted to get introduced the Houston at the Houston show? That's for sure.
How was the valet pay compared to like a wrestler pay? Was it similar because you were managing top stars?
Um, I'm. It was really good for what I was doing because I mean I was getting paid just to clap and smile. I didn't take bumps. I was just there to get heat and do whatever they told me to do. So I couldn't really say that I should make the top pay like with what Polly was doing because I wasn't taking the bumps and I wasn't like in the ring. Um, I kind of wish I'd stood up more for my money, but then the first year that I worked for Crockett, I made $85,000. So for me, that's a lot of money. And when you think about it, it was a lot of money, but then I had all the expenses. The only thing that they paid for was my airfare. I had to pay for everything else. So when Tully and Flair and all them were staying at the Marriott, I also had to stay at the Marriott while they were sharing rooms and buddy up together. I stayed by myself. So while they could share the $150 room, I had the $150 room on my own. Plus, I was getting paid less than what they were doing. So it was. I can't really. I really can't complain because it was so much fun, and I was making so much money, and I really didn't see it as a business. It was just something that I was doing that was really cool at the time. Um, the money was good, but I don't think I even made half of what Tully did. But I really can't complain. I mean, who was I going to complain to? And then they'd find somebody else to do it. So times have changed.
I'm gonna guess Ric Flair probably at least paid for your meals and stuff when you were out with him.
No, I took care of myself. That's part of the thing is you take care of yourself. That's part of the beauty of wrestling is that yeah, it's kind of a team situation, but you're you have to get yourself to the airport. You have to rent the car. You have to take care of your gear. You have to do your makeup. You have to do your hair. You have to plan your meals. Um, you're in charge of yourself. No one else is telling you what to do except for when you're on the way to the ring of what you've got to do there. So there's so much freedom, and then you don't really want to take that away by bitching about it. You're like, well, oh, I'm not making enough money. Well, you made $1,000 in Greensboro. I drove 90 miles for that. That was great. So I if things were different, yeah, I could complain now because I could go this, and this. I would like more money because of this, and this. But because I was like the very first one and the only one, who was I going to compare myself to? I couldn't say, oh, I want more money. Well, why you're not taking bumps? Why you're not part of Tully's the actual star, you're a valet. So,
And now
but I donated to Tully.
we hear that like Lana was making 250,000 for wrestling, but 650,000 off social media for Instagram posts and stuff. So they only wrestle like once a week now, maybe a couple more times once lockdown ends. But you must think that these girls are spoiled. Some of them complain a lot compared to what you had to go through.
Well, girls are going to complain, and that's why I'm one of the very few and one of the very different ones, because if you ask the guys that I worked with, um, I didn't bitch, and I was one of the boys, and I didn't. I trailblazed for a lot of them, and I don't want. I'm not the typical girl, so I wasn't going to go, oh, I don't have a dressing room, or I need my hair done, or I just did it myself. And that's because that's what had to be done. Now the girls today, they can get someone to do their hair and their makeup and have the YouTube videos and the TikTok and the Instagrams and make tons of money. And we just didn't have the marketing then, so I was lucky to get a T-shirt and a bandana out of the merchandising that they had done for me. So things have changed so much. So and I want people making a lot of money and being famous, and WWE showing our videos a couple of times a year so that people remember us and how good we are. And some of us turned into legends.
Is there anything that you'd like to plug before we go off? And where can wrestlers follow you? Not wrestlers, where can fans follow you on
That's what
social
they call
media?
it. Well, I've got Facebook and I've got Twitter. And if you want to find me, all you have to do is just hit Nickla. It's Nickla, and all of my stuff pops up. I'm the only one. And I'm on there a couple of times a day. So if you hit me up, I'll probably answer you back. I've got the Captain's Gallery coming up, or Captain's Corner with Captain Nick at the end of this month. It'll be Sunday and Monday up in Philadelphia. And I believe I'm in Allentown. We've got a bunch of guys going up there for that one. And then we've got the gathering at the end of July. I'll be there on Friday and Saturday. Samantha and I'll be sharing a table. They've got everybody booked on that one. And then I've got WrestleCade in November. So still busy, crazy busy.
Sounds like it. Well, thank you very much for your time. You're always very interesting to talk to.
Thank
And I
you.
hope to see your daughter in action in one of the big leagues soon. And I'll let you close this off with whatever you want to say to the fans to close this off.
Y'all, thank you so much for making me a part of your home and a part of your time. You have no idea how much it means to me that you guys have questions for me and still remember me. And thank you so much. Love y'all.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video